All right, we're all set.
Lisa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I am actually using my name Golden, which is the name I use professionally today. My name is Lisa Golden. I'm really happy to be here. I am a psychologist. My expertise is in trauma, and that's how I became part of Peace Pros LA. I most recently finished a 2-year, 50% position as a manager of the mental health grant for SMC. So I'm really excited to be back presenting today with a little bit of knowledge of the institution and to see some people that I know. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Lisa. My name is Michael Jackson. I've been with Peace Pros we've been doing this for more than 10 years now. Um, uh, I'm educationally trained as a social worker. I have a master's in social work. Um, I've worked with, as we would say, all the parts of development from adolescents to adults to seniors. So I have a wide a realm of working with um, all different ages and folks. So today we're going to go through this presentation and hopefully um, this a bigger group. So we're going to find the places in which we can have breakout groups. But for starting off the introductions with everybody here, I don't um, see opportunity to go through everybody in their department. So excuse me for that. Um, so what me and Lisa would like to go through is kind of a little bit of setting the guidelines for today and how we would hope we would interact with each other while we're in group or when we're in all of the session together. Um, so here we go. We hope that we all can engage in open and honest dialogue with one another um, uh, in a very you know, congenial way. Everybody has a different comfort level, right? We just hope that you're present and participate fully. Um, always keeping speaking from personal experience, using I statements. Sometimes I've done this. I got a great story, but it ain't my story. To make it more um, personable. Uh, Seek permission to ask questions, and this is kind of what we'll talk about in the break space. We want to. Sometimes people may feel their question uh, may be seemed as not well said or asked, or doesn't mean to offend. So let's just understand we're going to seek permission to ask questions. And then also let's listen respectfully and seek to understand one another as we go through this conversation.
I also think it's important to remember that we want to assume that everyone has good intent. We're talking about some topics today that really engender strong feelings and are really very real in the organization. And so please, whatever people's comments are, let's just assume that everyone has good intent. We also want to really encourage people to move in and move out. So some people are more comfortable speaking in a group and can at times take up a little bit more of the space in the session. So we'd like to encourage those people to step back and encourage other people to participate. That's actually one of the tools that we're going to introduce for disrupting bias is the ability to encourage the participation of people who don't participate as much. Also, let's explore the unintended impact of comments and behaviors. You don't know what the impact of what you say is on someone until after it's been said. So let's take that into account. Also, in order for this to be a rich and real discussion, we want to be brave and we want to be able to talk about topics that are uncomfortable. And because we're going to do that, we really want to respect and maintain confidentiality. In order for us to be productive, we have to be trusting. So we ask that you keep what happens in this session within the guideline, within the framework of the session as we've had it today. So thank you for that.
So I'm gonna talk about implicit biases. We're gonna touch on it. I know some of you may have, we've done, Lisa and I have done a really in-depth presentation before with staff during, I think it was staff presentation day, or when you guys usually have a lot of presentations going on campus, to be able to, I know as you all have different workshops that you need to go to. So I just wanted to talk just for a moment about bias, the light version, So bias can be implicit, which is unconscious, right? So some of those areas in which we talk about bias coming up really has a lot to do with predetermined ideas about what we think about things, right? This is not a bad or good. We all hold biases. And then there's ways that, we hold biases that are, in the background. But explicit, is sometimes, as we would say, is a little bit more of them in your face, or right there on the tip of your thought process or how you view things. And so just to kind of put a little bit of sentence, we've all had different, I know for me, I've been doing trainings for a while, and then I've been receiving trainings for a while. So bias and the idea of has certain synonyms for it, that things that we've all do in racial insensitive training, inclusive training, like all the different things that come along with understanding what we are engaging with mentally with one another, right? So prejudice is just another synonym from bias, right? Or preference, right? For me, I always use the preference of, like, if I'm riding with my grandma, I don't want her to drive, I'm like, she's a little bit too slow for me. I already have a preference over that I'm driving because I want to get there fast. That's something that's always in the back of my mind because I already have assignment to, like, I have a preference of me driving, right? And then there's all these assumptions that we have of people that we don't know, right? Which is going back to the sentiment of biases. There's, unless you actually engage and be able to have those questions that you may have gotten from social media, your education, um, your parents, and some of the things that transfer on to those thinking. Sometimes it's even our religion. It's all these different social regions that kind of inform us on these things that gives us our purview of how we see the world, right? And to being able to understand what is the truth, what is real, what is assumed, what is known, all those things are factors in how we actually engage it with our thoughts. So understanding that we all have biases, they come out in different forms, but the way we engage them and the way that we give validity to them is part of the sweet spot that we're going to be talking about, or understanding, or from someone that may be on the receiving end of somebody's bias, or yourself engaging and struggling with your own biases and how it's interpreted or put out to your fellow coworkers, right? So.
And then I just want to add very briefly that one of the things that we're talking about today is how biases exist within systems, and that there are things that are systemic biases that are not necessarily always based on traditional sources of bias like race, gender, but actually may have to do with the actual setting and work system that people are in. So just be thinking about how bias works in a whole system in addition to how it works with individuals. Any questions at this point before we go into the clip? Comments?
No raised hands so far. And nothing in the chat. So we're good.
Unconscious bias happens under the surface, and we don't even know that it's happening. And unfortunately, unconscious biases can cause us to treat people unfairly.
When a guest comes into one of our operations, we're welcoming them in our space. We want to deliver a great experience to all of our guests, but we can't do that if unconscious biases make our guests feel that they're unwelcome.
We work in hospitality, and by definition, that means treating people well. That includes both our guests and our coworkers.
He used a very nasty slur about my sexual orientation, and he doesn't know one thing about that. But he took one look at me and figured he knew everything he needed to know about that.
And the thing is that I'm on that video. I wasn't doing anything wrong, but I am personally associated with that situation.
I pretty much hated coming to work because of them. I talked to my manager about it. She said she talked to the maintenance manager, but nothing really changed. And I ended up quitting.
It wasn't overt or anything like that, but you could tell he had issues with us, and it wasn't just about the money.
I tried to leave my own bias at the door. You know, we've all got them, but I can't let that cloud my judgment. People depend on me.
So reaction to that video, can we get some comments?
And please feel free to unmute yourself or pose your questions and comments in the chat feature.
We have a silent group. Come on, guys.
Anybody experienced similar situations at work to the ones that have been described here?
Ooh.
We can move ahead. So do you want to move into the next slide, Michael? So the next kind of bias that we want to talk about is bias regarding class and work class. And work class bias is kind of the term that we've coined a little bit to focus our discussion today. Class bias is referred to as the prejudicial treatment or perception based on social class. so that a person's social or economic station determines their value in society. And this comes way back from the time when kings and queens and popes were considered to be the class most important, and servants were considered to be the least important class. And classism obviously exists through multiple levels in our society, and it also exists in workplaces. And so for the purposes of our discussion, work class bias is the prejudicial treatment or perception based on work classification, so that a person's work classification may determine their value in the workplace. Can anybody comment on that?
I will.
Thank you.
Go for it, Paige. Thank you.
Paige, I'm an administrative assistant. And I think the reason that I decided to speak up was because I've been caught saying in meetings, I'm just an administrative assistant. And very often people will chime in and say, no, you're never just an administrative assistant. Like they come forward to like reassure me that I am important, but I think we all have this ingrained sense of our place in things, just in general. And you know, it's probably slightly different for everyone, but I feel really grateful that most recently I've taken on a new role, and my current supervisor is very clear about letting me know that we are a team and that my input and my contributions are just as important as anyone else's. And it's not that I didn't have that before, but for whatever reason, I was stuck in my own ideas of what I was allowed to do or what kind of power or sway I had. And I still run into it, you know, I'll still kind of revert back to these like childhood moments when I feel like I've overstepped my boundaries, but that's something I'm working on. And I do think that SMC is headed in the right direction, trying to bring classified voices more into the conversation, but there's definitely still a pretty clear existence of the work. I mean, they're literally called classifications. So yeah, that's all I had to say.
Thank you so much, Paige. That's really important. I wanted to invite Cindy and Saman, who both acknowledge that they've experienced these kinds of situations in the workplace. Did you want to comment?
I'll briefly say that I agree with Paige that the department that I'm in, one of the departments that I'm in, there's an absolute sense of teamwork and camaraderie, and I definitely never feel that my voice is somehow silenced or less important in meetings. However, the culture is. The campus-wide culture is different. You know, your department may have great respect for what your contribution is, but your classification outside of your own department is where the prejudice comes in, and where you might, if you're going to experience that type of class bias and hierarchy, you're more likely to experience it outside of your department, at least in my case.
Thank you, Saman. That's Cindy. Did you have something to add?
Sure. I think what creates this feeling for some of us, I'm going to echo what Paige and Sam has said, because I've experienced this. I've worked in like maybe 6 or 7 different departments, and I'm very involved in a lot of different committees. So I experience nuances of this bias. But I think what creates it is that at SMC, even though there is a culture, of inclusiveness, and we're definitely headed in the right direction, I feel like the classified staff are, kind of like an afterthought, because we are very, we're always willing to step up to the plate and go above and beyond, but it's not the first thing that's considered. It's always the second thing that's considered. before decisions are made, or, in general at the college. And the other thing is there's a lot of silos. And so those silos create, a sense that you don't belong in this circle of, or this silo of administrators, or, groups, or tasks, or committees. And so I think that's what contributes to that. And it's like I said, and we're kind of like a second thought. So, as a administrative assistant that has worked in several departments, and have been involved in plenty of projects throughout the college, it definitely doesn't feel like that when you're not acknowledged at that level, or sometimes you're just not you're just kind of overlooked. So I feel like that work class bias is definitely something that I've experienced, and it's not like a direct treatment that they treat you a certain way. Like I said, it's just I think the silos definitely make you feel that you're not included.
Can I add something to that, Lisa? There is also a feeling that faculty are more important than classified. That feeling seems to be, as hard as everybody tries to deal with it, it seems to be lingering, because faculty have tried to be very supportive of classified, and come up with terms like classified educators, and but as a college we still have that separation of importance, where a classified is less important than a faculty, and that is sometimes difficult.
And I think, Paige, you said at the beginning that the language of your supervisor was really important in terms of how you felt treated. And I think that is a really important point, Fariba. And I think that as we look towards solutions and being aspirational, the behavior of supervisors that use specific and intentional language like yours did, Paige, are really become important. I know Denise had an important comment about a balance and towing a line. Did you want to share that, Denise?
Sorry, yes. Yeah, I agree and respect everybody's comments thus far, because they're very important, with classified staff's voices being heard. But there's also considerations for managers to respect the job descriptions and classifications of employees, because we are a very union strong organization, and managers can run into situations where if we over delegate responsibilities to staff that are outside job descriptions, this can enter sticky territory of working out of class and things like that. So being respectful and inclusive and trying to work outside of that silo mindset is one thing, but it also has to be contained in the larger context of not giving somebody too many responsibilities and too much, that it can also bleed into an issue with job classification and the structure of the job itself. So it is a very delicate balance, I think.
Spoken like someone who's been in both roles.
Yes, I have.
Thank you. That's really important input. Do we want to move on? Michael? So, of course, having reminded myself multiple times to ask you all to have a sheet of scratch paper and a pencil or a pen ready, if you have an opportunity to take a blank sheet of paper and write down in a column the initials or the names of 2 to 4 people that you trust the most as coworkers. And when you've had a chance to do that, we are going to ask you to put a tick in the column next to the name, next to people who are similar to you along the following dimension. So who is similar to you in gender? Put a tick next to them. And next, I'd like you to put a tick next to who is similar to you in ethnicity. And then I would like you to put a tick next to the person who is the people who are similar to you in professional background. And finally, I'd like you to put a check next to the people who are similar to you in their job class. Okay, and now we're gonna break out. Cyrus, can you break us out into 2 rooms?
Absolutely. Give me 1 second.
Okay, so we're gonna break out and discuss a little bit about this.
All right, so we're gonna break out into 2 rooms. So just 2, right, Lisa?
Yeah, Michael in 1 and me in 1, right?
Sounds good. And I can always manually assign Michael and you into both rooms. So, all right, everyone, I'm gonna assign everybody into 2 breakout rooms. You please go ahead and select select accept.
Thank you so much for being so sensitive about content and recording, Cyrus. That makes it much safer for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. So then moving to the aspirational component of our discussion, how do you interrupt bias? How do you make communication transparent? How do you develop clarity and understanding in the workplace? And we have some specific suggestions, and we're very happy to hear more, and, to hear what you guys think.
Yeah. So for us, coming, sharing this information, the first thing is sharing the wealth, right? So as you say, one of the interrupters, and what does that mean? For us, it really means expand, illuminate best practices from one department to another, right? As SMC is its own ecosystem, there's a different feeling of people on one part of the campus than the other. And being able to present examples of non-biased leadership and to be intentional and strategic on taking, there's reinvent the wheel, you do not, there's, positive ways in which to impact and expand what one department is doing good for another. To switch it up, right? I mean, these are the mundane, but as someone who's been to a lot of staff meetings in my life, create new meeting protocols, practices, guidelines, set up a rotation for tasks and don't ask for volunteers. When you get your own group, sometimes you know the person who wants to take the notes, you know the person who doesn't, who wants to lead the meeting. And then I always feel that staff meetings or meetings, whatever, gives the opportunity for people to grow in their own skills, hard and soft. So slow down when feelings are high, right? So for us, slow down and being mindful and considered in your responses to others, especially when emotions are high, right? So breathing, I mean, there's a lot of things that are heightening people's responses: pandemic, non-pandemic, familial, non-familial, career. There's people already coming in to meetings in the place of work, and understanding how we can be more curated and how we approach each other can mean everything, right? So expand the network, right? The next one, expand the information of diverse coworkers and individuals you may not naturally gravitate to. This kind of, when I was thinking of this, kind of reminded me of the circle of trust. Some person in our group talked about vulnerability. I think this is expand the network, right? Somebody who may be different, who may be more independent, may be hermit-like, maybe not. Somebody who's social butterfly. All these different variants of people and how they exist at SMC gives an opportunity to expand the network and invite more people in, right? Calling in versus calling out, right? Invite elaboration, right? So for me, I think of this addressing things directly if people over or under participate. So you can't have the input of a lot of people if you're not getting it from them, right? And what I love about calling in versus calling out is the way in which sometimes, as we say, it's not what you say, it's how you say. How you bring people in with your curiosity and wonder more than, I don't want to say demands, but in different ways that show that you're really calling them in to participate and you're really not calling them out.
And I would just segue with calling in and calling out that very often there's something that goes on that's out of line. That's uncool, that's not fair. And we get worried about how are we going to call this? This is this is not an okay behavior. This person took my words and shared them out with a whole bunch of people I didn't want them to. But yet, if I call them out, am I subject to something negative? And that's why the concept of calling in versus calling out is important, because when you call someone in and say, hey, I want to understand your thinking. I want to understand, sorry about that, want to understand what happened in this situation. Can you help me understand how that went down or what happened? That's not like what you did was totally out of line and really sucked and I'm unhappy about it. It actually requires the person who engaged in the behavior to take some responsibility for the impact of it. So just want to share the additional thing about that. So the next slide first, and any comments about these bias interruption techniques or things people want to say or share? Okay. So the other techniques that are really, really important are to compliment and connect. Always tell someone when they have succeeded, okay? When they do something positive. When you do that, you create an alliance. So one of the things that we also heard was that sometimes people who are working to change something are divided and conquered. They're separated so that they won't have the same ability to face issues that are difficult together. You need to meet that with unite and prosper. So bringing people together through talking about their value, through talking about the importance of what they do is a good way to be able to fight that. Intention and inclusion, and this is similar to something that Mike talked about, but when you know people have specific skills, you want to bring them into the discussion. If you know that you're going to have a discussion where there is potentially a lot of concern or fear or negativity, you're going to want to bring in somebody like Maria Arango, because they are unfailingly positive. And that's really an important person to have on your team. People like that are really, really valuable. That's not every employee, but when you have people and people who listen really well, people who heard what was said, that's a very specific skill too. So you really want to try to always include people that have the ability to enhance and clarify communication. The other thing is just sharing time. Lots of people like to talk a lot. They like to be heard. It's really important when you know you have a stronger voice to be able to step back and bring other people into the conversation to have more of a voice. And sometimes you have to be very intentional and even consider something like a little egg timer or a talking stick or whatever it is, because in many situations, communication is not shared equitably. And equitable communication is one of the central ways that you can create equity. So making sure that people communicate in a way that's, fair and respectful of the time is important. And then low profile is not low value. Like Paige was saying before, she was previously in a situation where she didn't have the opportunity to show what she could do. So her profile was low and her value wasn't perceived. And now she's in a situation where she's able to do things and be seen. And so again, building people up, talking about the importance of their contributions. Just because you count on them to always be there and always take great minutes and always know what's going on and always understand the really specific details of a situation doesn't mean that everybody says that to them. So somebody like Denise, who understands details and how things go together and what the fine points are, is really, really important when you have a room full of everybody who's just generally throwing it all onto the pile. And the last one I think that's really important is combating the modesty mandate. Lots of people, women in particular, and people not from the dominant culture, have an idea or are socialized to be modest, to not talk about their contributions, to not say, hey, I did something really cool here, look at what I made. And if you don't show your value, people won't always see it. So both being able to stand up and talk about your own value and to point out the value of other people who are modest is really important. Giving a compliment is a powerful act. It is a powerful act. It increases trust. It increases the perception of value. It makes the complimentee feel good, and it makes the complimentor feel good. So again, as kind of a small and simple thing, but really an important one. So I think we have about 3 minutes left. Do comments or questions at this point? Anybody?
I have just a comment. Are you going to send us this PowerPoint, Michael?
Yes, we're going to make it available to you
Yeah.
guys on the committee, and then you guys can share it with any individual. We welcome you to, a lot of our stuff is derived from other sources that we have and other presentations.
Okay.
And you're welcome to use anything. Just let us know.
Thank you.
If you want to use it. But yeah, share the wealth.
Yes.
Trying to live what we speak.
For the people who couldn't be there, it would be.
Yeah, no, really super appreciate the wonderful attendance today.
Yes, it was great.
Really, really good group. Thank you. Thank you so much to the committee too. You guys the committee put in hours of work with us planning this. So we hope that people have found it enjoyable. Really, really fun to work with you guys. And the other thing is just to let people know that we can do more. We can go into more detail. It's hard to do a deep dive into issues this important in 90 minutes, but what a warm, wonderful audience, and what a pleasure to be able to work with you guys.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm done.
Oh, okay. We're just talking about there's a lot of cultural stuff that we're against in many different places. And all of you have a way to alleviate, engage, and more importantly, be part of whatever work environment that you're trying to create at your job. And SMC now, for somebody who was born and raised in Santa Monica, I know SMC well. And I think I just wanted, as we're ending, and then we're still open to any comments or questions, I just wanted to share the sentiment that anytime I've come on the campus as a student or as a community member or as a presenter, everyone I've met usually has been classified staff. That's who I meet first. And SMC has, you all do your job very well. And I just wanted to commend all the classified staff that are here and that are not here, because it's hard. You guys are, in baseball, there's a term of like a 5-tool player, right? Some people know baseball or not. Pardon me, I have a sports background. I use sports analogies sometimes, but you have to do everything, right? You have customer service, reports, working with student, like that you have to be a jack of all trades, and I just wanted to say you all do it well. So that's all I have to say.
And I would agree. I think that despite the things that you all experience that are difficult, the face that you put on the school really does feel friendly, and it feels welcoming, and it feels helpful. And I will just share with you, Fariba, that I thought you were in charge of the library when I first worked at SMC.
I am in charge of the library. I don't know what you're talking about.
I know you're in charge. I knew you were in charge of the
Yes, she
library
is.
as soon as I
Yes.
got to SMC. So, talk about a 5-tool player. Thank
It
you
was
so
amazing,
much.
guys. It was really awesome. Thank you very much. And I'm sure we'll have you guys back.
No problem. Thank you.
It was our
Thank you.
pleasure. Everybody have a great day.